What's up, everybody? I'm Dan.
And I'm Jasmine.
Welcome back to Speaking Through the Gray. We're very excited for episode number 2. We're going to be talking about pastors and their families, and this is going to be such a great topic. If you are a pastor, stay tuned. There might be information you hear that will encourage you and realize you're not alone in some of these issues. And if you are somebody who attends church, this is such a great time to learn about and hear about what your pastor and your pastor's family go through, so you can pray for them better and be excited to be more in tune with what goes on in their lives. So let's get into it.
Speaking through the gray. Speaking through the gray. Speaking through the gray. How did it happen?
So like we said, we're talking about pastors and their families, their children, their wives, and what church leadership go through every week after week after week. Dan and I both were raised in the church. We both grew up pastors' kids, and we have a lot of stories. Currently, we are working in ministry. Dan is an associate pastor. I am working in women's ministry. And we're going to start with the calling of being a pastor. And it's accepting the calling of becoming a pastor and how it affects the pastor's family. So what do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely something that is a calling. Being a pastor is difficult. It's not for the faint of heart. Just to say something real quick, Jasmine actually created the outline for this, so I'm very proud of her. We talked about this on the last podcast. Jasmine had, I listen to long form content constantly. I love podcasts, and Jasmine's more of a TikTok attention span. Mm-hmm. But she listened to one full podcast this week that was long. But yeah, so it's just, we're trying to learn the balance of working together. And on the last episode, I talked a ton, so I'm going to try to let Jasmine talk a little bit more this time because, she's my wife and I love her. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the calling. So Jasmine actually put this passage in here as a really good passage to share. It's from James chapter 3, verse 1. It says, "Dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach will be judged more strictly." That's something that people need to realize. That, again, if you are called into the ministry, if you are a teacher or a preacher in the church, that you are judged more harshly. So the standard is high. And so as that standard is high for you, essentially it is high for your family, mm-hmm. because you're called to lead your family.
Yeah, and the children really do feel it. Each week it's like you're on a stage, everyone sees you every week, what you do, how you do it. That can be a lot of pressure, mm-hmm. even for a wife and young children.
Yeah. No, the focus is on you. And the hard part is finding that balance of where some churches, the focal point is the pastor, mm-hmm. when in reality, the focal point is supposed to be God. One of my favorite preachers back in the day was Francis Chan. And I remember at one point, around the time I think he decided to leave his big church, he actually found out that from the parking lot attendants, the people that do the parking and all that, they were like, people would ask, is Pastor Francis speaking today? And they said no, and people would turn around and leave. And it's like, at that point he was like, this is not right. This is not okay. Yeah. And but yeah, the focus, the job of the pastor is so difficult because there's so many moving parts, mm-hmm. in it. But the job of a pastor is to teach and prepare people and empower people, mm-hmm. to do the job of a follower of Christ. Yeah. And point them to be in love with Christ, mm-hmm. and not just in love with the way the service is structured, not in love with the way the worship band sounds, and all these things. They're good things that add to the experience of how you grow, but they're not the main thing. Yeah. You
should be coming to grow your relationship with Jesus Christ, not just to see the pastor and the first family. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of that falls on the children as well. We take on a lot of roles, working in children's ministry, doing worship, and week by week, we sometimes feel the pressure of that. so that we can also move on to our next point, pastors as parents, what it's like to be a pastor's kid. So we have a point from Vander Bloom, 11 things a pastor's kid may be thinking. And I just put 2 points. You put the church over me, and you don't expect me to be perfect. So you put the church over me. What do you feel about that when it comes to pastors and their children?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And it's interesting, depending on the culture and where you're from, people approach that differently. Mm-hmm. Like when I was in Peru, we were at speaking at a missionary conference. My parents were speaking on different topics, and I was speaking on different topics as well. And this is one of the things we talked about, is like being a ministry kid. And some people find it noble to be so focused on the mission and so dedicated to their calling that their family is on the back burner. And I don't agree with that. And I guess depending on who you are and where you're from, that you might not like that or agree with that.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you are a leader and you are a pastor, you should be the example that, these things are important. God is number one, for sure. And then your family comes after that.
Yeah.
And you have to find a prioritization in your balance and how you approach those things.
Yeah.
Because if your kid is like, the church is more important than me, and again, some kids can not understand the balance of that, and you have to explain it to them. But I think that it's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like as growing up as a pastor's kid, my parents tried hard to balance the both. But I think in general, we all put a lot of hours at the church. And then we weren't at the church if we were on vacation. Sometimes you get a lot of phone calls. Emergencies pop up. Well, we're, out to dinner, but sister so-and-so called, an emergency has happened. And sometimes those things feel like they're coming first. So I think that was one of the hardest parts for me growing up. We're always there. Is there a home balance to being in ministry?
Is there a separation of church and house?
Yeah.
Or home? Yeah. No, that's difficult. And again, I think everything comes down to balance. Like if something's going on in the church, there's an emergency, there's certain things like, I'm going to always, run into those situations and be there for people. Yeah. But at the same time, like there's situations where there's a family matter or things that I have to be there for my family at the same time. Like I can't put my family to the side for ministry purposes, like, and I don't, and I know that if God calls you to it, that he's going to supply you the grace, the situation. Like, if there's a situation where it's like, yeah, you obviously don't want to put the kids down by yourself at night, but, I have to run out and deal with the situation. Like you and I have an understanding in that. So you have grace for me or I have grace for you, like women's ministry stuff. Yeah. Like, we
really have to work together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's huge. And I'm not sure if it's in here, but if it is, we'll touch on it again. But I think that pastors and pastors' wives, like there's a whole thing there as well. Like, understanding that balance of mutual respect, mutual understanding that like your time is just as valuable as mine and how we operate in those scopes. Again, we have grace for each other because we both understand the calling and the purpose we have. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And still find time to put our children in there as well.
Yeah. Somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there.
They fit.
Our next point is don't expect me to be perfect. I feel like a lot of times I felt like I needed to be perfect because you're the show family at the front of the church. Like everyone walks in and you have to be perfect at all times. Do you feel like we have to be perfect? Should we be near perfect?
I mean,
what do you think?
As a pastor's kid, I was not. Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know. This is where we should have some fun back and forth on this as far as, I don't know, I feel like you were probably more clean cut and better behaved than I was. Just in general, in life. But I mean, I had moments where it was like I was scrutinized for the silliest crap as a kid. And I was like, I don't know. That's where I was like, I really felt that pressure of being the pastor's kid when I was like, you're supposed to be the leader of the church. It's like, I'm 13 years old.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But like, I think there's a balance, and always there's a balance in it. But I don't know. I definitely understood that there was a responsibility level there. And I've seen people experience it in different ways to where it was too much pressure. But I understood it, and I also understood at a very young age that I was called to ministry too. So it was like, this is the training ground for my future. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, did you have that at all?
Yeah, I think I dealt with it more with like social media aspect. Like I'd have someone come to church be like, "Oh, I thought her social media picture was inappropriate," or something like that.
What?
Like, and it was just like of my face, So I felt like anything I did on my face. So like those small things here and there that like really can put a damper on life, even when I feel like I'm trying hard enough to be a good person, and you still pick apart. I think at some point we have to realize that people are going to pick apart just about anything.
Yeah.
We're not here to be perfect. We're not perfect people.
Yeah.
So that took a while for me to understand as well.
Yeah.
Did
you end up in a lot of sermon illustrations growing up?
Of course.
For any of you pastors' kids watching, you will 100% relate to that comment. And as a father and a preacher now, I constantly, children are just literally walking sermon illustrations. So I don't have any hate or bad feelings towards my dad for doing it as well. But yeah, again, it's interesting. So there was an interesting interview I watched with who was it? Michael Newells from the Daily Wire. He had the one girl who was for YouTube algorithm sake, OF model. And she grew up as a pastor's kid. And so now she came back to Christ, and she's, turning her life around and all that. But it was interesting because like Michael Knowles is a Catholic, and she was explaining to him what it's like to be a pastor's kid, and it was like so foreign. So like I think about the fact that a lot of people don't understand, especially that come from like a Catholic background, because obviously they don't have a way for kids, or just from a non-church background. I remember being in Little League, and I told someone, yeah, my dad's a pastor, a preacher. He's like, I didn't think they were allowed to have kids. And it's like, so people are so ignorant to it, not in a negative connotation, but like a lot of people don't understand. So that experience of being a pastor's kid and being in the family of the pastor is interesting.
Yeah.
It's a very high pressure. And I think that, again, being a pastor's kid and going into the ministry, I think that if you are called into the ministry, you should also know your family dynamic.
Yeah.
Because
you got to create boundaries as well with each other. Some things are too personal. We can't say everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's... You definitely...
We can go too far sometimes.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, have I ever said something too far from the pulpit?
No, but I also think I set a boundary with you very early on.
Yeah. This is our private life. Do not share it.
Yeah. So I think,
Yeah.
You've got it down.
Well, that's good.
Our next point, let's talk about church hurt. So we have, I had a definition of church hurt because I wanted to look up exactly what it could be. And this is from eventel.org. It says church hurt occurs when people are emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or even physically damaged by those whom they thought they could trust. And we've got story after story after story on church hurt, or sometimes I like to think of people hurt. What do you think?
People hurt?
People do hurt.
Oh, yeah. 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 I mean, church or otherwise, I mean, it's been an interesting season of life the last couple years, especially. I don't know if it's just COVID and everything in the media has gotten extra hype and whatnot. But there's been a lot of family dynamic things and things in our friend groups and things around the world. There's just been a lot of things we've had to work through emotionally and spiritually. But church hurt hits different. And I know we both have had different experiences growing up in the church. But for me, personally, when I was freshman in college, we went through a really bad church situation where basically there was like 2 or 3 people who were essentially trying to manipulate my dad into resigning, and it was really ugly. There was a lot of things that you would never expect. And the area I grew up in, I had no family outside of my immediate family. So these people in the church were my family. Then I went to college, Bible college, to actually pursue ministry. And then it created a really messed up situation when my dad resigned and stepped down from the church. There was a season where I, as a pastor's kid, completely stepped away from the church because of church hurt. And like, I still believed in Jesus. I wasn't living the most godly life at the time, to be honest. But I don't think people realize when certain things in the church happen. I understand, like, to be critical of the pastor. I'm not one of those people who are like, don't speak against the leader of the church. Like, if your pastor's doing something wrong, respectfully and within biblical lines, like, there is an outline in the Bible of how we're supposed to deal with those things, how we're supposed to approach people and call them out. But I don't think people realize how much going after the pastor, especially for stuff that's just ridiculous, really impacts the children and the family of the pastor. And, through God's grace, thankfully, things turned around. And it's funny because in the parking lot of that church, I remember, and my mom brought this up, I remember saying, I will never go into ministry after my dad resigned. And then, I don't know, probably 15 years later, I ended up, it's a different place now, but I ended up going back to that same place to speak at that church, which it's like God's grace is awesome. But it's like, I don't know, like how much people going after the pastor, especially outside the lines of like what's actual legit, how much that impacts the family. Have you dealt with that at all?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think my hardest thing is what I've seen my parents go through time and time again. They will build a relationship with new members, go to their house, will share stories, share shampoos. Do you need the shirt off my back? We'll give you the shirt off. We need money. We'll give you money. And then time passes and suddenly they're not friends with you anymore. They don't want anything to do with you. They'll go around, talk bad about you. It comes back to you like I'll hear it at school. Oh, she said this bad thing about you. We were best friends for years, but now it's over because you don't want to go to our church anymore. So that tie that we were friends, but now we're suddenly not, is because we were, the church was helping you, or are we being used? So that is what I find most hurtful. And I keep seeing it through ministry growing up. And even as an adult, of people who say they want to build a relationship with you, but end up disappearing the next day. So that I have major trust issues because of that.
Yeah. Sorry, I've been dying to use the sound effects, and I was like, this is probably not the appropriate time. Well, I mean, it technically was, but there's a couple more I might tie in there real quick. So, anyway, there we go. Anyway, yeah. No, church hurt is no joke. And again, it's not just the pastor. It's not just the pastor's family, but how it impacts the whole church. Like, we are called to be in community, to work together. And as soon as, sorry, I'm like thinking of like what do you think? Okay, because this is, not in our notes, but what do you think?
There we go.
Oh, it's about to get wild. What do you think causes, like, the top reasons that cause division in the church?
Oh.
Yep, I'm going deep.
That's a good question. I feel like there's a lot of money issues, what I've seen recently. Theology is what's really hurting now because of what's going on in our world. So should we follow the things of the world? Should we follow the things of the Bible?
All these pastors want to be social media influencers more than pastors and shepherds. Yeah.
Yep. So that's hard because that'll just politics, That'll just break people right apart. It's no longer about the Bible. It's what my aunt thinks. So I need to go with my aunt. I don't know. It'll just really split people up. That's so sad.
We're gonna have to do a whole episode on politics in the church and whatnot, because again, there's so many things where it's funny, because like I'm a very political person. I love politics. I study politics. I'm very into it. But I think there is a line where, like, I heard this preacher go off. When we do that episode, we'll make sure to have the clip in it. But this pastor goes off because he's like, there's this like a Trump Bible that has the Constitution in it or something like that, and he's like, what is wrong with you people? He's like, this is our temporary place that we are living. We are only visiting here. Like our king, our home is the kingdom of God. And it's just like, these things that get in the way. I think other issues that cause division in the church, pride and egos. Or we've always done it this way. Have you ever heard that one in church?
A lot.
How does it make you feel?
It doesn't make me feel happy. I feel like a younger person coming in.
Yep. Process it.
It's like a wall. Like you hit a wall. Like you want to make certain changes, but we've always done it this way, so we can't change.
Yeah.
But you can a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you have to like always come back to the word. Okay, what does the Bible say about this? Can we, figure out what God actually says about this situation and go from there? But some people don't want to do that. So
yeah, no, it's tough. And we say all this because, again, for a pastor, it's not just their job; it's their calling. So it's different than like my full-time job. I was just telling Jasmine, we were just literally at the store and I'm fielding phone calls, and I had to make 10 phone calls in the 20 minutes we were in the store. It was crazy. But like, my job is my job. It is not my calling, but in ministry, like, that is my calling. So there's almost like a double-edged sword of feelings and mindsets that come into it. And so like when a pastor is going through these things, and again, his goal should be, not always is the case, but should be unity. It should be to bring people together, to bring people to be focused on the word of God. And if that causes division, so be it. That shouldn't be an issue. And we see this in certain denominations currently that want to kind of go off onto the left and do their own thing. But again, as long as our goal is to honor God and worship Him and be the community He's called us to be, that's the goal. But when a pastor is trying to do that and other people are letting their agendas and their different things like finance, greed, whatever the pride, all these things, it takes such a toll on the church, but also, again, the pastor.
I feel like that can go right into pastor burnout, which is one of our last points.
Go for it.
So we have from an article called Soul Shepherding. We have some statistics from this article. It says 75% of pastors report being extremely stressed or highly stressed. 90% work between 55 to 75 hours per week. 90% feel fatigued and worn out every week. 70% say they're grossly underpaid. 40% report a serious conflict with a parishioner at least once a month.
That's generous.
Yeah. So extremely stressed or highly stressed, working too much. What do you think?
I don't know, that last one. I personally, for the most part, our church, I don't really deal with too many issues like that. Right now. Oh, trust me, there's been seasons where you're walking out of a board meeting and you're like, all right, well, maybe this isn't my calling. It's... and that thing about, grossly underpaid, 55 to 75 hours a week. I'll be honest. Again, our church is an outlier. We're very blessed. Shameless plug, Wyoming Avenue Christian Church, Kingston, Pennsylvania. What's up? Shameless plug. Sorry, I've been dying to push that button. I couldn't find a reason to, and I made a reason. Anyway, really though, our church is very blessed. For a small church, when I first started going there, I think our average attendance was like 40-ish. And now we're seeing a lot of times like closer to like 60 to 70, and we're seeing a lot of visitors. Our treasurer Jason, just the absolute goat of treasurers. For you older listeners, that is the greatest of all time. I just realized they may not get that reference. But like our treasurer Jason's just amazing, and he's just making sure, you know, all the little crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, you know, as far as compensating us. And both the senior pastor, which is my dad, Pastor Dennis, and myself, we're both part-time. He has a full-time job as a hospice chaplain, and I have a full-time job as an operations manager. And so, you know, I know myself, I'm at my place like 45, 50-ish hours a week at my job, but I'm also like on call 24/7. So like it's nonstop. And then I also, and which kills me because I want to be more involved in doing things, and time is just so limited. But my dad growing up, he was full-time. From like middle school through high school, he was a full-time pastor. And I've seen that. It's tough. And I know I have friends in ministry, and I know how much money they make that are full-time pastors, and I'm like, holy crap, like that's tough. I don't know how you survive. A lot of them, it's pretty wild. Like no health insurance half the time, and it's very tough. And then on top of that, it's like, can you imagine just like you're barely making any money, you're doing it because you love God and you want to serve these people, and then someone's like, I don't like the way that song went today. It's like, shut up, like stop
like church
it.
hurt on top of burnout. It's not good.
No, it's tough. Like, I don't think people realize. Again, the amount of people. Was there one in there about how many people are considering leaving? No, but I mean, I've seen some statistics about the percentage of people that have left the ministry in the last couple of years, the percentage of people considering. That you got to realize, especially if you are listening and you are, a member of a church, you don't know what your pastor is going through.
Yeah.
You don't know the hurt and the pain that he feels. And it doesn't just have to be one time a year during pastor appreciation that you let him know. I think that we are doing an injustice to the body of Christ when we are not uplifting our pastors. And I'm not saying this for, people in my church, hey, encourage me more. Like, I know God is giving me so much grace and strength to do what I do, but a lot of people, like, especially if you have a pastor who's full-time, and this is their main thing, like, there's so many ways to encourage them. You don't have to give them a fat check or do these things, although they will probably gladly accept. But cooking them a random meal or saying, hey, can I help you out here or do whatever? Like it's the little things that are so meaningful. Like this would be an interesting one. What have you experienced things or seen things in ministry, whether at our church or growing up as a pastor's kid, where someone did something to serve and encourage your parents as ministry leaders, your mom as pastor, your dad, everything, that you were like, non-conventional, or things that, like, what are the things that helped them or encouraged them? Like, what are you things you saw?
Anytime like any of my parents were sick, we would always have a member to drop off food at any time we needed. We didn't even ask. They were just gonna come by, drop it off. Like, thank you for helping us. This is for you. Anytime I needed childcare, I was younger than my siblings. So any time I needed to be picked up from somewhere, needed extra help, there was always a church member willing to help out with me. Growing up in the church, they were always just there for my parents when needed. And there was always a group of people that were very faithful through all of the years, that we're always going to be there for them, no matter what. If we needed a car to help us with cars, to pick us up from anywhere. So that's always been
And y'all had
great.
A mechanic in the church.
We always
too.
had shout out to Alex. He's still their
the
mechanic.
Man. He's such a nice guy too. He's literally like the nicest guy. Like, he was at our engagement party, I think, right? And he met my grandfather, my pap, And every time I see him, hey, how's your pap doing? I'm like, he's
Yeah.
such a nice guy. But like literally, like we're talking about, these are the people. Like that little thing that he did where he met my grandfather and he remembered that and he asked about, like, caring, actually caring.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and again, yes, we as pastors and ministry leaders, we are here to encourage, and we're here to be a service to the community. But there's a difference between a community outreach thing and being a member of your church.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I think that people, if you have gotten to the understanding, you understand salvation, you understand what it means to follow Christ, and you're called to action to be a member, which a lot of people, we have a very extensive course we go through for our members at our church. But if you're at that point called to be a member, you are not called to just be a taker, or you're not just called to take, you're supposed to give.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, because if all you do is, Pastor, I need this, Pastor, I need this, Pastor, I need this, Pastor, I need this. Again, I'm not saying that it's wrong to be in need. That is 100% okay. That's what we're here for. I want to help. I've literally, you know, and not to brag at all, but there's been times where, you know, I had an unexpected, like, you know, a wedding or whatever, and I'll get a check for it, and I'll be like, you know what, God, give this to somebody in the church. I don't care. If somebody's in need, boom, done. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But if all you do is take and you are not giving, then you are not really fulfilling your calling as a member.
Yeah.
And again, you don't have to give money.
Yeah.
But like,
also supposed to serve.
Yes.
Help us in the kitchen. Help us fold some chairs. Help us vacuum.
Yeah.
So that we don't burn out.
Yeah.
We're, you know, running the church, preaching, singing, you know, dancing.
Yeah.
We need help with cleanup.
Yeah.
We need help cooking food.
There's so many simple ways. Yeah, seriously. Like, and again, if you're only taking, but like those same people, like, if I don't have any gifts. You got arms, you got legs.
You can figure it out.
Well, you know, and even if you don't, I'm sure we can figure something out for you. I mean, like, you know, are you good with a computer? Join the media team. Or, you know,
so many things you can do.
Play an instrument? Help out with the worship team. Or can you pick up a chair and put it in a stack? Boom, there you go.
This also helps out pastors' kids from burning out.
Yeah.
Because we
are unpaid labor
on a lot. You know,
Gideon and Gabe aren't there yet, unfortunately, just because they're unorganized chaos.
I'm hoping we don't get to the point where they have to burn out, though.
Yeah, no. I think being both, which is such an interesting thing, to both be pastors' kids and be married and have kids that are now in ministry. Like, I think we're going to be pretty well equipped to understand those things. I really pray to God we are.
Yeah. Well, I'm from a small church, so we did everything. Dad preached, we did worship, we also did the, teaching kids. And then if there was Bible study, we, taught that. Saturday, we led worship practices. Like, it was boom, boom, boom every week,
Yeah.
So that can cause exhaustion.
Yeah.
A little bit of burnout.
For sure. Any other thoughts on this whole topic of pastors and their families in the church?
I think overall, as an adult, I'm glad that I was a pastor's kid. I learned a lot. I got to see a lot. And as a pastor's wife, it has led me to, my own relationship with Christ and have discernment when it comes to people and to deal with different situations and bad situations, good situations. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. No, obviously we kind of bring it back to that whole speaking through the gray areas. Like, that's why we're trying to talk about really bringing out these stories. Like, not a lot of times do people get to really have a sit down, listen conversation of two pastors' kids who are also in ministry and understand it. And I really hope that the biggest takeaway from this, pastors, if you're watching, be encouraged. You're not alone. Reach out to another pastor friend. I have a pastor's friend who's going through something right now, and I just reached out, and I know he's super busy dealing with a lot of stuff. And if you're watching this and you know who you are, I love you, brother. But he's got a lot going on. Hey, dude, is there anything I can do? Praying for you, get connected with another pastor. Make sure you do not be in isolation. I think that's a terrible and terrifying thing for pastors.
Yeah. Who mentors you?
Yeah. Who's the pastor's pastor?
Yeah.
And that's something I'm personally working on trying to get better with, because I do have other pastor friends, but again, we're all so busy. But don't make excuses for that. Make sure to reach out. Make sure to touch base. And if you're a pastor and you're my friend, you're listening, bro, reach out. I love you. And the other takeaway, again, if you are a church member or you are somebody who attends church regularly, don't just be somebody who takes. Be somebody who gives. Think of ways you can be of service. Again, it doesn't have to be complicated. Helping put the chairs away, helping to clean the dishes. You can pick up a paintbrush, or you have skills that are unique that aren't being used in the church. You better speak up. Let us know. We want to hear from you. We want to see you be used by God and your purpose be fulfilled in that. Looking at the end of this outline, it literally just says, and I just realized the camera's just been on you that whole time. My bad.
Gosh.
As you're just watching me talk for like 5 minutes. So if you're watching on YouTube, my bad. But the Jasmine on the outline, the end just says, say something positive.
Say something positive.
Something positive. I'm sorry. I wanted to push it again so bad. Yeah, I don't know. I think something positive is, I think a lot. No. I know it sounds like I don't know what I'm about to say, which is partially true. But I just want to say I'm encouraged by the fact that a lot of people think the church is heading in a direction where the church is dying. I mean, we see that constantly. Another one down the road from us just shut down. We see it constantly. Churches are shutting down. But I think that seeing what's going on in our world, like, there was that revival last year at that college campus, and it broke out to all these other college campuses, and people are worshiping, and you're just starting to see a movement of people who don't want to just go with the status quo, and church in unconventional ways, house churches, all these communities being formed in unconventional ways. I believe the body of Christ it is still growing. Our church especially. I mean, we're a tiny church, and seeing people come in. I mean, we've worked hard on trying to be out there, get exposure, let people know that we're there. But the amount of newer people that have just been coming in and are hungry for God. Testimonies of some of the people, one of our newest church members, amazing dude, just seeing people that we have no idea who they are coming in, and they're hungry for God. They're hungry for something real that you're not going to find in this world. So hope
is there.
Yeah.
Like, just don't give up.
Yeah. And so, again, realizing that if you are a Christian, you follow Christ, you realize that the only real hope and the only real light in this world is Jesus Christ. And you realize that as the church, you are all collectively called to spread that message, and your pastor is leading that at the forefront. That is so huge. Yeah. That is so important. So being intentional about encouraging them and really helping them continue to fulfill that purpose is huge. It's amazing, an amazing opportunity that they have, and I just pray that you guys would continue to grow and learn how to grow in your faith, but also grow in service of the body of Christ.
Yes, agreed.
Word. All right. Well, we're done. Okay. Justin's like, the transition is
over.
Last point is we're done. Thank you again so much for listening. We hit, I don't know, which isn't a big deal, but we hit, I think, 100 views today on YouTube on our first spot. Yeah, it was 98, so I'm just rounding up at this point. But if you're listening on Spotify, make sure to leave a review as well. And guys, if there's any topics you want to hear, please let us know. We're very excited for this, and we are just about to hit 40 minutes, so we're going to wrap this up. But again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week on Speaking Through the Gray.